Hello and welcome to the Hibs Observer Thursday afternoon briefing with myself, Liam Bryce, joined by both Craig Nisbet and Matty Fairnie this afternoon. We're back after the international break and it's been a busy old week at Hibs, so we've called in some extra reinforcements to try and make sense of everything that's going on over the past week. We'll touch on Ian Gordon's interviews actually. He was kind of the Hibs executive director, speaking out at the start of the week there, covering a range of topics from transfers, finances, the relationship with the Black Knight Group, and it's certainly stoked a lot of debate in the days since. So we'll touch on that. We'll also look at the injury to Kieron Bowie and what that might mean going forward. We're still waiting to find out kind of news exactly what's going on there. And as well, Hibs have made a signing today. Dwight Gayle coming in on a one-year deal as a free agent to bolster David Gray's attack. So, gents, thank you very much for joining us. As I said, a lot to discuss today, so we'll get straight into it. The big kind of talking point of the week obviously was Ian Gordon coming out and speaking to Sky Sports, the Scotsman newspaper, and also doing a Hibs TV interview as well. So really kind of put himself out there, answering questions on a lot of different topics. Matty, I'll come to you first, just for your overall feeling on the interviews and what you took from them.
I thought it was good that he did it. I think it's been a long time coming, isn't it? Like it's been a while since Ron passed away, and that sort of silence, I don't think helped anybody for it to go on as long as it did. But I suppose you can understand with the circumstances why it took a while to sort of be ready to come out and face everybody. My initial thoughts were it was a lot of words without really finding out too much. But the more I've sort of reflected on it, I think I probably feel more positively about things now, having sat and listened and digested and picked apart what was said than I was pre-interview. I think it's been a good exercise for him and for the club.
Yeah. How did you feel about it, Craig?
Yeah, I'd say it's similar to Matty, I suppose. I think it was a long time coming, and I think Matty's right to highlight, the bereavement and the loss. We can understand that COVID and all the other stuff that was going on in and around those times. It was probably long overdue. When it came out, and especially the Sky Sports one, listening to that, I felt like the answers were quite short, and some, it was quite a lot of questions. I think Luke Shanley did a tremendous job going through it. But I suppose, but having another couple of days to sit, listen to it again, and read through it, I feel like there's been a kind of a line in the sand drawn. There's been responsibility taken for a few things, and now it's all about sort of moving forward. So I think it's, I think he's damned if he does, he's damned if he doesn't. So I'm glad he did it. And I think most of the fans seem to be fairly on side with what he said, and hopefully just looking forward now.
Yeah, exactly. I think, as you said there, I think for somebody in Ian Gordon's position, you can be damned if you do and damned if you don't. There's always going to be, I think, when you're tackling, when you are the guy who tackles all the issues that are as broad as they come at a football club, I thought you're probably, even if you do come out and provide that level of transparency, I think it's always going to bring more questions on top of that. I think that's just kind of the nature of the game. But I mean, if we can try and break it down and maybe kind of more distinct sections, if you like, I think one of the things that dominated the interviews was the topic of recruitment, and I think it's Ian Gordon has come out and he certainly held his hands up to a lot of mistakes. I don't think he was, he didn't at any point, try and kind of defend some of these mistakes that he's talking about that have been going on for a few years. We kind of know we've talked about it, for a long time about recruitment not being quite up to scratch, signings not made. He talked about his own role when he took on the head of recruitment role, kind of owned up to mistakes on that front. So, Matty, I mean, for yourself, I'd imagine it is heartening to hear, somebody at the top of the club, kind of putting their hands up and saying, right, that it hasn't been good enough. This is what we're going to do to fix it. So, I mean, with recruitment specifically, did you come away from that feeling a bit more encouraged? Did you have more questions? Was it a bit of both?
A bit of both. I think it is refreshing to have somebody say, like, it's not been good enough. until you realise how many things that they're saying it about. I think that was like the sort of thing. It was like every topic, and you go, all right, there's another one to chalk it down to. But I think where I get the reassurance this time is we've got Malky Mackay come in. I think Brian McDermott, despite his recruitment background, I don't think he was a good fit for like that sort of director of football type role that Malky's in place now. But when you hear Malky talk, his first interview that he did when he with Hibs TV when he first came on board, he described like what a director of football should be doing, and I think the longer he's in and gets to put in place a proper recruitment structure, the less mistakes we should see coming through in the back of it. I think this summer's maybe been a window too soon for him to have had a proper impact. But I'm heartened that it looks like Ian Gordon is signing the checks and not doing much else on it. I'm heartened that he's happy to sign the checks. Obviously, he sort of talked about being prepared to front up the money for Luke McCowan. And happy that we've got somebody who knows what they're doing in charge of recruitment. So for that side, I think they needed to admit to the mistakes because you couldn't really do anything else other than sort of just front it up, really, because the recruitment has been so bad. But like I said, more positive going forward.
Yeah, Craig, I suppose what if there's maybe one or two sort of criticisms that have come out of perhaps the Sky interview in particular. It was, again, nobody's, doubting that Ian Gordon's come out and he's owned up to, various mistakes, various things. He's talked about lessons learned. But I think one thing that I've maybe seen a few folks saying is that they maybe would have wanted a bit more detail on exactly what some of those lessons are. Would you agree with that assessment, or did you were you broadly satisfied with the answers that you gave?
Yeah, I think I would have preferred, a bit more detail, and certainly some of the thinking behind what they were trying to do and the decisions made. I think Luke mentioned it and is asking about could it be seen as a bit of nepotism, you getting into that role, and what was your background on that role, head of recruitment, and he obviously spoke about the courses and things he had been on, but I think everybody knows that just wasn't good enough to have that. You need more caliber in that role, and it's certainly where the club was. When you couple the recruitment with, if we talk about the managerial changes as well, kind of go back to what Matty said at the start, there was quite a lot of, got that wrong, lesson learned. Yeah, we got that one wrong too. Lesson learned. And now you're kind of going, right, well, now there's no real room for error here because we can't have another lesson learned, and we're going to really need to stick to that model. So I'm glad that we've got to where we have got with Malky in and David Gray as the manager, which we spoke about before on this podcast about, this is probably they two were the right fit for the club at this time and what we needed. But for me, I think over the years you've seen that there was a bit of let's try and be a bit like Brentford or a Swansea, and let's sign these players, bring them in, work them, get them in the team, develop them and sell them on. And I know he referenced some of the money that we've made off players, but it came from Doig, it came from Nisbet, it came from Porteous. It's not, and I know they referenced Melkerson. For me, that's a failure. I know we made a bit of money back, but if you think of all the wages and the other things that went on him, I don't think that can be a success. So I think I'm glad that we've got Malky in, and I think this transfer window, I think, has been a really good transfer window. I don't think it's been great. I don't think it's been terrible. I think we've done really well with the business we have done so far. And obviously we're probably looking ahead to next summer when more bodies can go out the door, and then we can really build from there. So I suppose you're taking everything he says and going, right, okay, but it's now really important that next season, once we get the bodies out the door, that this recruitment's done properly. And actually, if he is taking this back seat and signing the checks, then I'm way more comfortable with that than what we have been doing.
Yeah,
I think. Sorry,
no, go ahead.
I think what was interesting was when he talked about the review and there being the need to have this sort of Scottish or British core experience. And if you look at the recruitment that's happened in the summer, it's actually been one of the rare occasions where what the club have said they're going to do mirrors what's actually happened. So virtually every signing that we've had come in the door this summer has British or Scottish experience. So I think that was a bit reassuring as well, that they've gone, here's where we've learned the lesson, and here's where we've acted on it and actually kind of delivered to address it.
Mm-hmm.
And just quickly, I mean, do we think that Jack Ross really went out to sign Chris Mueller, or is that because that was one that I was struggling to kind of to wrap my head around specifically, but. Matty's spot on. I think the signings, all of them this summer, I think have been like quite pragmatic, and they've come in. We've got good squad players. We've got good enough starters. And I think now that the window's shut and we've had these extra, couple of weeks with the players and things like that, I'd now like to think our season really kicks on from here.
Yeah. Well, Jack Ross, if you're watching, do let us know in the comments. And we'll maybe even get you on the show one day and you can talk about it in more detail. But yeah, just as we were saying, just to kind of break it down a bit further again, I think one of the big questions of the summer has certainly been the relationship with Black Knight FC. We had it all sort of, I don't know if kicked off. It didn't all kick off. Maybe that's too strong a term, but we certainly had a bit of a kind of, yeah. there was certainly, a few headlines written, put it that way, when Bill Foley got behind the microphone earlier on in the summer, and he talked about Hibs, essentially, well, not even essentially, it was kind of word for word saying they're not listening to us. That obviously shone a spotlight on the club, on David Gray, Malky Mackay, kind of everybody involved in decision making. And so I suppose Ian Gordon was always going to face questions about what that relationship is now like. He kind of maintained that it's still strong. We seem to have lost Matty for a moment. I'm sure he'll pop back up in a moment. At least it's not me cutting off this time. It was me a couple of weeks ago. My face just kind of froze on the screen. I think Patrick thought I was still there. Well, hopefully we'll get Matty back in a minute, folks. Yep. But while it's just you and I, Craig, we'll talk about. There he is.
Sorry about that.
Just dropped out there briefly. Sorry about that, folks. But yeah, as I was saying, the relationship with Black Knight FC. I mean, what did you make of how Ian Gordon tried to, address those concerns? Because obviously he's kind of saying that, the relationship is still strong, it's still there, they're in constant contact. But I suppose specifically on the topic of, Black Knight FC not necessarily agreeing with the appointment of David Gray and Malky Mackay, he did stress, Ian Gordon, that they would always take, as much as they value that relationship and the outside opinions, that they would, always. I think it was a Hibs first approach is how he framed it. I mean, where do you stand on that? Is that the kind of thing you like to hear, or do you still you have concerns around that at all?
For me, I quite like that part of the interview, to be fair, and I think when we discussed it at the time, maybe before when that Bill Foley made his statement, is that I actually think for all the decisions that Ian Gordon and things like that have probably got wrong, that Malky Mackay coming in terms of his experience and that in the role and what he's gone on to do so far, and then David Gray in terms of, I know, a young manager, but somebody that knows the club and knows that core group of players to deal with that transition, I thought was the right call. And I think you're maybe in danger. Obviously, Matty disagrees, but I think you're in danger of.
Must be fed up with us too, I think.
I know. I think you're in danger especially with a sort of minority shareholder, if you listen too much into that, I think that can be, I don't know, I think at the time I just thought that would be maybe a wee bit detrimental, and we weren't in a great place. We didn't really have the foundations laid. I think now, even just looking at the players that we've brought in now and then going ahead into next season, you would want the Black Knight to probably come in with more ideas and suggestions and things, and certainly for maybe potentially players, I think that would be really welcomed. But I think at the moment I'm quite comfortable with what we've done so far, and may come back to bite me, but I sort of support like what Ian Gordon and the board did in their decision making in the summer.
Yeah. Matty, I don't know how much you've seen or heard of that.
Most of it. I caught most of it. I don't know what's going on. My MacBook's just decided to have a wee hissy fit to itself. Just kick him out and then switch him back on again. So fingers crossed it stays stable now. I've unplugged a few things, so here's hoping we're all right. I thought the answers that he gave about the Black Knight stuff were interesting. Again, probably more reassured than I was before that things were on track. And I think this is where Hibs miss a trick, because they talked about Tim Bezpachenko, who's the Black Knight president, spending time at the club. And I just thought, why did we not know about that already? Like, I don't know, like the club don't have to broadcast everything that they do.
Mhm.
But how much would minds have been put at ease if they'd said, we're hosting this guy who's coming to kind of look at these aspects of the club, help us with X, Y, and Z, and Malky's in constant communication with them, which I think is the case. Ian Gordon sort of reiterated that. He spoke about, I think it'd be in the early stages of the whole sort of franchise, if you like, and I think that makes sense. It's one of these things that if you take a step back, and I think we all, because of Bill Foley's comments about Hibs having a few million to spend in the summer, and we all had these ideas of what that meant for the transfer window just gone. When that didn't materialise, I think if they go back and said, actually, we're at the start of something, it's going to take 18 months to a year before you really start to see benefits of it coming through. That seems like fairly realistic. I mean,
Mhm.
if you look back at, like, Man City never took it over and won the Premier League in the first season. It took them a few years before they won it. It was like a gradual build up. So I was like, right, if I take a step back and step away from the noise that was made when the initial deal went through, it makes sense, and it's probably more realistic to sort of position it the way that Ian Gordon positioned it now than how we viewed it at the time, which I think is, go back to that word again, reassuring.
Mhm. Yeah, is that kind of the main theme that you've kind of taken from just that certain aspect? Just feeling a bit more reassured, just like, because as you say,
Aye.
there was a lot of noise around it at the beginning, and then the whole thing with Bill Foley, it just shone this extra spotlight on it, didn't it? So I suppose it needed this kind of something to just to calm down the speculation almost, even if you, as you had said there, maybe there was a kind of an easy opportunity to say, this is what we're doing, we've got this guy up at the club. But I suppose it's maybe one of the things that for now there's maybe still going to be questions over other areas, but does it, at least for the moment, just kind of, is the kind of, maybe the people you've spoken to, other fans, feel particularly kind of on side with that element at the moment?
Yeah, I actually think Craig nailed it earlier on when he said it was like the line in the sand with it. It's sort of, it served to quieten noise rather than create it, which has been an issue previously. And yeah, definitely for the folk that I've spoken to, people seem generally on side on the back of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, as we were saying, we're going to try and just break this down into different sections. And I suppose as well that, he answered quite a few questions, Ian Gordon, about the club finances. Just to kind of paraphrase just sort of some of it, he said at the moment there is a current overspend with all the changes that we've had. That comes big financial commitments. And I suppose the big takeaway line is that something that my family is committed to at this time. So, Craig, I mean, kind of reiterating, sorry, that's a word that I shouldn't attempt on here, that the family kind of, that there's kind of losses being made. I think it was maybe 3.9 million in the, if I got that spot on, I'm sure somebody will correct me if
It
I
was
haven't.
3.9.
Yeah, aye. Should have looked that up before I came on, but thankfully I've no messed that one up. But as I said, it's a commitment there to cover that overspend, but with a kind of, a realization that things need to keep getting better on the pitch for them to get better off it as well. These two things kind of go hand in hand, don't they?
Yeah, and I think the financial part of it, making that commitment, and obviously he touched on that, and the family's commitment's obviously brilliant. I mean, the cynical part, if he goes, well, he's been a key part of why it is the way it is in terms of the turnover of manager, the players coming in, overseeing some of these contracts and the wages that are going out. So I think there's probably an element of him going, yeah, I've got to stick by this and sort of get through it, and we get to next summer and the squad hopefully becomes less bloated and we can build from there. I actually thought, obviously when he discussed Ben Kensell and the sort of commercial side, and I know, listen, I'm one of the fans at the commercial side of stuff. When you hear about it, you maybe roll your eyes and you're more concerned with the product on the pitch, but hearing those figures and just how much growth and stuff that's done, and actually seeing it, I suppose, when you're at the stadium and the kind of stuff that's come out recently from the club about the various packages and stuff. I know it's not for every fan, I totally understand that, but that is something for modern day football. It's part and parcel of it, and it is a good way to get revenue. So hopefully now that that's been done, the investment's been made in there and it's been put in place, the focus can kind of shift back to, or maybe have a closer eye on the football pitch, because that's where it's been let down.
Yeah, I think as Craig says earlier on there, Matt, and he's kind of saying there about the financials, like it's for some of these things, this puts, as we've said a few times, this kind of line in the sand. But I suppose if we're going to start looking forward from the interview as to what comes next, I think it's just fans will just want to see kind of steady improvement in all areas. I suppose, especially, kind of goes without saying on the pitch. Now that a lot of this has been addressed, you can put at least some of it behind you. But now you kind of, I suppose, as a fan, you now want to start seeing results.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with the finances thing, I have limited sympathy for like they have a responsibility to fund the losses. They kind of fronting up and saying the family's committed to covering the overspend. And I agree with you, Craig. Like they're responsible for it ultimately, but they also chose to buy a football club. Like it wasn't, nobody had a gun to their head and said you need to go and buy Hibernian and run it the way that you want to run it and lose this money. And I think that sometimes gets lost, and also the way that they've financed the overspend previously, which was to loan the club money and then convert it to shares. And it came out in an interview. Luke asked kind of directly, "Is the idea is you get that money back when you sell the club?" And Ian says, "Well, yeah." And Ron was always open about that, and I have zero problem with it. But I always sits a wee bit uneasy with me to sort of make out that this is like a good deed that we're doing, or we deserve all this praise. You go, well.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to make money in the end at the back of it. You're doing it for more than just the sort of the goodness of your heart. But if the club is successful, then the Gordon family stand to make money from it when they walk away. Zero problem with it. Like when Fergus McCann did it at Celtic, you would say he did a good job and he probably deserved the money that he walked away with. And if the Gordons do a good job, they'll deserve it as well. But I'm always like, it's your club. You should be committed to the spend. And my worry was, there was definitely a hint of we can't keep doing this forever, though. So what happens? Their track record of getting out of things right has not been particularly good. So what happens if it's not right this time with Malky and David Marshall and David Gray, and they roll the dice again? How many rolls of the dice have they got left before that overspend becomes completely unsustainable? And what happens then? That was kind of where I ended up on that part of it. Still, I don't know how reassured I was about that particular part of it.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that's a fair assessment, Craig?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're going to become like a sunk cost fallacy where they just keep throwing money at it and going. So I agree with Matty. I think there's I talked about the line in the sand, right? But I suppose my worry is like, right, if we have, I think this season, top six is absolutely where we should be and where we need to be. I think if we were out of the top six, I think we would, most fans, depending on where exactly you finished in the bottom six, would probably take it as long as things on the pitch started to look a little bit better and there was a bit of excitement coming back and things, maybe another wee boost in January with signings. But then I think the next season, the pressure becomes massive because then I think it'll be like, right, the bloated squad's gone. We've got this squad in place. We've got this manager. We've got now, and then from their point of view, financially, Ian Gordon, it'll be like, right, we have to get this. We have to get in the top six. And I think even though there's been this line in the sand, and maybe it's taken a bit of pressure off him now, I think then going forward, the pressure on David Marshall, David Gray, Malky, and then subsequently the players becomes massive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, it was so wide-ranging, the interview. I doubt I've touched on everything. So, before take us on to other matters, is there anything else the pair of you wanted to address when you came on? Anything you think we've not covered? Any lingering thoughts in your minds on it?
The only other bit for me that didn't really sit right, you're laughing because you think you know what I'm going to say.
No, I was just waiting for somebody to come in.
I did really think about the questions around Hanlon, Stevenson, even Lafondra. I forgot to mention for him again. I didn't really think those questions were handled particularly great, and I don't think that really came across too well.
Do you think those questions caught him off guard a wee bit? He didn't. Maybe.
Potentially. I think so. It was hard, as I said. A lot of his answers during that part were really short and sharp, and obviously Luke tried to press as much as I think he probably could. I just didn't really think they came off particularly well, and that was quite disappointing to hear because I thought there maybe would have been a chance there to take that, like to take the responsibility there and just say, yeah, look, we made that decision, and in hindsight, you know, we could have done this, and I just, yeah, that part didn't really sit well with me.
Yeah, what do you think, Matty?
I would say, like, to maybe to finish on a positive with it, I thought the overriding feeling that came out is they definitely care. There's definitely like a genuine desire to do well at the club. There's a passion and a willingness to improve things. I didn't feel like it was empty rhetoric that they were spitting, like he was spitting out. I thought it came from the heart. I think he genuinely wants the club to do well, and the family doing, they're invested in it. You know, for multiple reasons, as I maybe mentioned, but I was comforted with that. I don't think they're like fly by night. They're going to wash their hands of the club as soon as things get difficult. I think it's already difficult, and they're sort of getting their hands dirty to fix it. So I thought fair play to them for that.
Yeah, I think I would agree with that. Yeah, definitely. There does seem to be a real kind of willingness and desire to get it right one way or another. So yeah, just leaving that behind for the moment. I suppose the other, well, two big stories over the past couple of days. Obviously, Dwight Gayle coming in as a free agent, but first we'll touch on Kieron Bowie getting injured on international duty with Scotland under 21s. He was scheduled to go for a scan either late last night or today, I believe, where Hibs will find out the full extent of that hamstring injury. I suppose it's a worry because it was a hamstring injury that he got at the end of his time with Northampton, and I think for that reason, you know, Hibs David Gray have been really careful managing his minutes, his substitute appearances off the bench only when I think a lot of people there was a real clamour for him to start just based on those substitute appearances. But I suppose for David Gray's point of view, though, that is during the international break, that is your worst nightmare. I think obviously, you know, managers will get a lot of time to work on things in the training pitch during this time, but there must be an element where with the guys that are away, they're maybe just sitting about just waiting for something to go wrong, like waiting for the phone to go and like, oh, so and so has just been taken off injured. So it's a kind of manager's nightmare, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really gutting to hear. And actually, I think, you know, you're spot on what you're saying about how Gray's managed him. You know, I was one of those people kind of clambering for him to get more time on the pitch, and you can see there that, you know, it shows you how much I know when he starts and he gets that injury, and I suppose we're just crossing our fingers that it's maybe not something that's going to keep him off for too long, because he has made such an impact off the bench, his physicality, everything like that. And I think we were really looking forward to seeing him post-international break, maybe getting a wee start or getting some more minutes. So, yeah, it's a bit of a hammer blow. But obviously, bringing Dwight Gayle in kind of softens that. Maybe Ellie coming back as well, fitness-wise. So hopefully it's not too big a hit for us. But, yeah, it's really disappointing because he had made such a positive start.
It's pretty irresponsible from Scotland, I thought. Like, it wasn't you know, the second game wasn't like a game that was going to be in the balance. I think Scotland were comfortable in the game, and Hibs, I understand, had sort of made noises to Scotland to ask them to manage his minutes carefully as well, and so to start him 2 games in a row in quick succession, I just thought it's irresponsible, and it's probably not that big a surprise that something went wrong. And yeah, I hope there's some lessons learned from it.
Yeah, I think the thing that stood out for me as well, that would probably, I'd imagine, would maybe annoy a few folk at Hibs is in his post-match interview before Scott Gemmell spoke about Bowie's injury specifically, he was talking about how bad the pitch was as well. So I think if you've kind of got a guy there who has had a hamstring injury, his club are very carefully managing his minutes, to then you would think they probably could have been a bit more careful with him, Craig, I suppose.
Yeah, totally, and it's really disappointing to see them use him in that way, and I think, you know, in the physio world, you know, like I've seen it before being at the club, like there's such differences of opinions on certain things and how people feel, and, you know, I'm sure Kieron Bowie wants to play, wants to start, and, you know, wants to represent his country, but yeah, it just the second game, it doesn't seem like he needed to do that, or again, you could, you know, if you look back at how he's been used at Hibs when games like with a week apart, still coming off the bench and just getting increased minutes, to try and, like Matty's spot on, to try and start him within the space of a few days. Yeah, it's really irresponsible.
Yeah, I suppose especially that game as well. I think, as Matty says, Scotland were always likely to win it, and you'd think, if you needed more goals, because I know it's very tight in that qualifying group with Belgium, it could potentially come down to to goal difference. But you'd think, bring them on a bit later.
Yeah.
Opposition are tiring, already a bit demoralised. Perhaps he's kind of potentially the perfect player for that scenario. But it's all lifts and buts now, and as we say, we kind of hope the results of that scan don't throw up anything too bad for Kieron Bowie. David Gray will be speaking to the media tomorrow to preview the game against St Johnstone, and he's likely to have some sort of update on that. So we're bringing that to you as soon as we can. Kind of more positive news on the injury front, though, Matty. Junior Hoylett and Ellie Yuan could be back involved this weekend.
Yeah, massive news, and probably the perfect timing, like you say, like Gray was saying, with Dwight Gayle coming in, having Ellie and Junior available gives us a bit of a different dynamic. I think we've definitely missed Ellie. I mean, he's on his day. I think he's Hibs' best player. So to have him available, hopefully motivated and up for it, because I think his summer was a bit rocky with some of the Hibs fans, and some of the messages that were flying about were far from acceptable. But hopefully he's kind of going to come in the right frame of mind, and we see the best of him. And I'm quite excited for all we sort of joked about Junior Hoylett signing when it happened, because of the sort of the chat about lowering the age of the squad and everything. Then we bring in Junior Hoylett. I'm interested to see how he plays as well, because I think he did well at Aberdeen, and I think if he can replicate that at Hibs, then he's going to be a valuable addition to the team as well.
Yeah, kind of looking forward to seeing Junior. Obviously, everybody knows what Ellie Yuan can do. Potentially a devastating footballer on his day. But just kind of in terms of what you think Junior Hoylett might bring, Craig. I kind of watched when he came in. Did watch a bit of him from those games at Aberdeen. Once he got up to speed, I think the thing that stood out for me is just like a really intelligent footballer.
Yeah, he's obviously he's older. He's an older player now, but when you watch him, I mean, especially that game against Celtic, which I remember watching, he just picks up those nice little positions. He moves at the right time, and we've got, whether he plays on the right or the left hand side, we've got the fullbacks now to sort of bomb on and create that space for him. And yeah, I'm really excited to see that. And obviously, your interview with him as well, and talking about him taking a sort of more like a leadership role sort of within the team and on the pitch as well. I think that can only be good for us as well, having somebody out there with that experience and to help the players round about him, because I think the squad is still kind of lacking in that confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. So, but as well as Junior Hoylett, Dwight Gayle, as we've touched on, signed a 1-year deal today to come in to have to further bolster the forward line. I mean, Craig, again, I'll come to you first on this one, because we've talked so much about veteran strikers over the summer. I feel I need to give you your moment with this one. So if nothing else, could Dwight Gayle, fill that Adam Lafondra shaped void for you?
In my life, yeah, I think so.
Not even for him, just for you.
No, just personally. No, he'll be fine. No, I think he's, I think reading, being involved in that PFA scheme, and the fact that he's sort of done a pre-season and had some games and, kind of been looked after and stuff, it means he's hopefully ready to play, ready to be part of the team and come on. So I think with Fairnie going out on loan, and obviously with Bowie getting injured, and obviously Kurevich has made a good start, but there's fitness concerns with him in the past and things like that. I think it's on paper it's an ideal signing for us. I know he's not been super prolific in the last 3-4 years of his career, but I think the way we're playing, the way we seem to be under David Gray, we're counter attack quick, we're trying to get the ball in the box nice and early, playing off the second ball. I feel like he could be, in and around the penalty box, really decent for us. And again, even just we've noticed in the early games like Kurevich and stuff, 60, 65, 70 minutes, you can see he's tiring. So it gives you that a realistic sub that's going to come on and not weaken the side and not have to change people around positions and rotate things. It's just a striker that knows what they're doing. And again, that extra experience, like we just touched on with Junior Hoylett, I think, it's really, really valuable for the team.
Yeah. Matty, the Hibs announcement made sort of specific mention of, Gayle being like this penalty box striker, and as Craig's kind of alluded to there, does the kind of, can you see him being the guy this season? If you need a goal second half, he's going to be the go-to.
I hope so. It's definitely a profile of striker that we've not got at the club at the moment. So bringing him in fills that gap. And it's one of the features of a play that I've noticed this season, that when we do get the ball into the box, there's not really that many players in to get it. We talked after the Dundee game, we talked about the contrast to the amount of players Dundee flooded into the box compared to the amount of players that Hibs get into the box when they're attacking, and it was night and day. So having a player whose natural instinct is to kind of get into those areas for crosses for the likes of Hoylett or Ewan or Boyle or Cadden or whoever it is, it should add a different dynamic. And like you say, for chasing the game and need a goal, somebody with his experience and a sort of calm elderly head, if that's not too stereotypical, is what you need. That's me just describing the calm elderly head.
No, I know what you're getting at. It's like, I think actually in the interview with Junior Hoylett last week, that was something he said, like has been able to calm the game down, like not as well as kind of providing knowledge and experience, just that kind of nous to know when to take the sting out of the game, know when to just bring a bit of calmness, a bit of composure to the forward line. So yeah, I suppose the hope is there that these two guys will be kind of invaluable in that sense. So I mean, we're almost 40 minutes in and we've not touched on the fact that there's a very important game for Hibs this weekend. So we'll just touch on that for a wee bit before we go. I think we kind of, before the Kilmarnock game, there was maybe a bit of discussion, right, the season needs to start here kind of thing. But I suppose, although in isolation, going down to Rugby Park and getting a draw is not a terrible result in this day and age, it's kind of got to the point, Craig, isn't it, that I think Hibs, they just need to get off the mark with 3 points one way or another this weekend, don't they?
Yeah, I think so. I think, we've had the, it's been a kind of a funny international break for us where there's been, the owners come out, they've spoke, we've got what we wanted on that front. Our player that we were pinning our hopes on has got injured. Then we've just signed somebody at the last minute going into a game. So, it's been a wee bit all over the place. But I think this game, home game, we've just got to get the result. And I think I'm not really bothered how it comes in terms of tactics or whatever. We just need to get the win and get off the mark. And I think that will give the players a massive boost of confidence. And I'm hoping that actually, because I know with the fans and stuff, it's been tricky, but I hope people turn up on Saturday and it's like we really get behind them and hope we don't concede early or concede late, because that'll be pretty devastating. But we've just got to go out and get the 3 points. Simple as that.
Yeah, because I mean, if the St Johnstone's last visit to Easter Road is any indication, it's perhaps not going to be pretty. I know they kind of bit of a smash and grab from St Johnstone the last time, but it could be a bit of a grind. But this, are you kind of in agreement? It's just 3 points at any possible cost.
Yeah, pretty much win any way you can. I think any time Levine brings a team to Easter Road, it's never a pretty game of football. It's very, very, very rare that football breaks out on these occasions. And I've seen some of the worst games of football have been between Hibs and St Johnstone at Easter Road. We desperately need to get off the mark. I mean, the 3 points, and we're not. I mean, we're miles away from must-win territory and all this kind of nonsense that flies about. But it would give everybody a lift, and as much as folk wouldn't want to admit it, the fact that Hearts have had a stinker at the start of the season, and they're away to Celtic this weekend, and there's a chance to open up a wee bit of a gap. It means that any sort of victory that we get, it means a wee bit more. It's sort of, you get that momentum and that feel good factor sort of increases quicker when the sort of the scales tip that way. So I think if Hibs can capitalise and if we're switched on and get a good performance, then like everybody feels a lot better about everything, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. We can go into next week, hopefully on a positive note. But for there, folks, we are going to leave it there for now. Thanks so much to Craig and Matty for joining us. That was a lot to get through today, lads. So I do appreciate your time and your insight. As always, if you're watching us on YouTube, we do ask if you could just spare a wee second to subscribe to the YouTube channel to help us keep growing that for now and into the future. And obviously our current offer for Sorry, I need to update that actually. Just to completely ignore that at the bottom of the screen, even though we've been running it for 40 minutes. That's my fault. On that note, we'll just leave it there, folks. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll catch you again very, very soon. As I said, keep an eye on the website for updates from the press conference tomorrow and our usual match coverage over the weekend. So, yeah, thanks for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you again very soon. Cheers.